All right. So we're talking about consciousness with Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj in his book, I Am That. We are on, let me fold all the way back here. Page, chapter 37, Beyond Pain and Pleasure, There is Bliss. All right. So before you feel pain and pleasure within yourself, there is bliss. That is your nature. And they say beyond pain and pleasure because pain and pleasure belongs to the mind, right? Because the mind creates a world in which only one side of the coin can be seen at a time through the use of egoism. And we get stuck in our distraction. It's like doom scrolling, as they call it nowadays. Doom scrolling in Reddit or Twitter or Instagram or whatnot, where I hear a lot of people having difficulty going to bed at night because they get caught in doom scrolling and can't put the machine down until 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And really, that's the way we live life. We just kind of doom scroll through our mind each day, just kind of, oh, what's coming next? Oh, what's coming next? Oh, what's coming next? Oh, cool. What's happening now? Right. And so we get just detracted from all of that. And they're picking up this conversation here where Maharaj is saying all consciousness is limited and therefore painful, right? We've talked that pure consciousness is awareness. Awareness with objects in it is consciousness. So consciousness is awareness with objects in it. So there exists another. And so it's no longer pure consciousness or awareness. It's now consciousness, which is conscious of other, conscious about objects. Right? And so we get stuck in this world of objects, being conscious of all of these objects. And that's our limitation. That's because we define ourselves as being separate from the whole, that then when we look at other things that are part of the whole, we also interpret them as separate from the whole because we interpret ourselves that way. And what we learn about ourselves, we learn about the whole universe because we ultimately are that whole universe. And so what is true for us in the end is true for the universe in the end because there is no difference. So all consciousness is limited and therefore painful. At the root of consciousness lies desire, the urge to experience. Yes, so we create ourselves separate and apart. We define ourselves separate and apart. And then we've got this huge unknown out there. What is it? What are all these things that are lying around for me to look at? Endless distractions, gems and jewels and smells and sounds and songs and music and dance and all these wonderful forms of God's beauty. And underneath it, the urge to experience, to go and explore. It's funny in a way because there's nothing there. It's the dream world, and yet even when we know it's not real, somehow we're very interested. I've always envied these gamers that get into these crazy worlds, where they inhabit a whole different world, Maya within Maya, and they're so deeply engaged in it. And I have tried, because I thought, what that would be a cool thing to have something that you could just go get lost in for an hour, or just to get away from it all. And I've never been able to fall into it because I can't get beyond the fact that all I'm doing is swiping and tapping on a screen. I just and how interesting could that be? How long could swiping and tapping on your screen be interesting? Because that's how you cast your spells, that's how you shoot your guns, that's how you dodge your bullets and your knives. But when you abstract it and you're just watching, you're just observing, you're just seeing that you're not doing any of those things, You're just sitting there and tapping and wiping on a screen in multiple different ways. And once you become aware of that, it's hard it's hard to get past that. It's hard to kind of buy into what's behind it. And see, this is why we want to create or exercise our observer within us, so that it never stops. It doesn't let any tricks past it like that. It always keeps you at that observant level of what's really happening in the moment. You're not in the World of Warcraft saving the princess from anything. You're wearing out the front of your iPad by making greasy strikes and dots everywhere, that you're going to have to clean off later. And so this is really what life is. Life, if you observe this life that we're in, you'll understand that all pleasure, all pleasure is just a compounding of the five, right? You've got five senses. That's all you've got for this world. So everything that you'll ever experience will always be a mixture of those five senses. How interesting do you think that's going to be, really? How much are you really going to be able to find on the palette of five senses? And so don't let that slip past you. As you get out there and you get titillized by the world, you get drawn in and desires form, look at them, say, gosh, that's just another pattern of the five. How many of these do I have to taste before I know? All patterns of five are unfulfilling. They can only distract me, right? So all consciousness is limited and therefore painful, because it pulls us out of ourself. It pulls us out of our contentment, out of our knowledge of immortality, out of our experience of that inner bliss, out of that experience of the presence, the fulfillment, the contentment of the moment. It pulls us out of that and places us in this urge to experience, which is just hunger. It pushes us out of ourself and into hunger, where we chase after the combinations of five to fill that hunger somehow. So the questioner says, well, do you mean to say that without desire, there can be no consciousness? I don't think so. And what is the advantage of being unconscious? If I have to forego pleasure for the freedom from pain, I better keep them both. Maharaj, no, beyond pain and pleasure, there is bliss. Right? And this is the important thing to understand, especially for those of us that are tempted with Advaita. We like Advaita, because Advaita can ruin your life if you don't digest it properly. If you don't understand that the reality that if you stop at all of this is an illusion, you will tend to fall into a very deep tamas. If you believe this world is just an illusion and you lose your motivations and you lose your interest, then you really just plummet into tamas, because you've lost your motive, right? What you have to do is maintain that motive, because tamas will not set you free. Tamas will not point the way to your freedom. It's another trap. And so instead of this, we have to know what Ramakrishna teaches. Ramakrishna says this world is not merely an illusion. There is a reality behind it, right? There is an unchanging reality behind it. It's like he says, the movie isn't completely illusory. There are some real elements there. There's the white screen, unchanging, behind the image. That's real. That's true. There's light, playing off of that screen. So that is true. There's a soundtrack. That's true. So all the elements are there. You can see that there is something there, but our job is not to see it as just illusory, but to understand that what we think it is, what we've decided it is illusory. But what it is real, and it's the absolute unchanging. And so it is what we find in Advaita, right? That is the divine presence. And that divine presence is of the nature of love. Anytime you experience the presence of love, or union with love, you're going to get bliss. You're going to get contentment. You're going to get fullness. You'll be sated. And so Beyond this pain and pleasure, this pull and push of the world in the mind, beyond that there is bliss. Beyond that there is you, the unnameable, that which you find out when you stop trying to listen to the mind for who you are. So beyond pain and pleasure, there is bliss. Questioner, unconscious bliss? Of what use is it? Maharaj, neither conscious nor unconscious. Real. Right? Means, what does he mean by that? By real. Right? Keeping it real. Well, real in this sense means unchanging. Right? Ramakrishna says, only that which is unchanging alone is real. And so he calls it's neither non-consciousness or neither conscious nor unconscious. It's real. It's that which does not change. It's the bliss that is the constant hum behind you. It's how you know the nature of the universe. It's how you find grace. It's how you trust grace. It's how you grow into grace, is through this unchanging sense of bliss that is within you. That's the constant invitation. That's the that's the thing that prevents us from just sitting down on a log and drooling ourselves to death out of lack of motivation or inspiration to be or do anything, because we don't know what we are. And if we just wipe everything out as an illusion, we fall into tamas. But if we understand that this illusion is distracting us from an unchanging love and an unchanging bliss and an unchanging wisdom within, then we get the right idea and we surrender into a dynamic state, the dynamic state of the expression of divine love, divine nature. So it's neither conscious nor unconscious. It's the real. And what is your objection to consciousness? Maharaj, it's a burden. It's a misunderstanding, right? Consciousness means you see objects, you're aware of other. So it's a burden. The body means burden. Sensations, desires, thoughts, these are all burdens. All consciousness is of conflict. Right? Relative things pressing against each other for value. That's the nature of consciousness, right? This crowded world of objects, all vying for attention, all vying for something. So this consciousness, this being aware of other, seeing yourself as separate and apart from the whole, that's your burden. And believing that you are the doer is the glue that holds you to your karma. And the mind, which uses time, space, and causation to experience the absolute unchanging, then is constantly in a state of flux, a state of disturbance, because me and mine is not natural. Me and mine is a disease to the mind. So this whole setup, as we do it, entering into this world with a me and mine, disturbing the calmness of the mind, puts us in the body, gives us sensations and desires and thoughts. And all of these are burdens. Why? Because they prevent you or distract you from sitting in your contented self, from sitting in your nature as the peace that passes understanding. Because as long as you're being tossed to and fro by the surface of the mind, you're not going to be able to sink into the quiet depths where the gems lie that Ramakrishna talks about. The gems of your immortality, the gems of eternity, the gems of this bliss, which is constant, unchangeable, uncaused, right? And therefore cannot be taken away from you. The presence, the divine presence of your sweet love is there within you. But all of this behind the veil of ego, it lies hidden from you. Questioner, well, reality is described as true being, pure consciousness, infinite bliss. What has pain to do with it? Maharaj. Pain and pleasure happen, but pain is the price of pleasure. Pleasure is the reward of pain. Oh my goodness, we're getting into something to here to take apart for sure. In life, too, you often please by hurting and hurt by pleasing. To know that pain and pleasure are one is peace. All right, let's take this apart. Pain and pleasure happen, right? So they are occurrences. Now, when you say happen, you kind of remove them from the circle of cause and effect, right? So what he's saying here is pain and pleasure happen. There's not a purpose behind them necessarily, right? If you act in accordance with your nature, you're going to move toward bliss, not necessarily toward pleasure, right? But if you, so pain and pleasure happen. Pain is the price of pleasure, right? Because that pleasure is going to stop and leave you hungry. That's the pain, right? The pain is that you can only have pleasures for very short times in this world. It's that poem of Hafiz, they can neither jump high nor laugh long. Those who are addicted to glands and experiences, that if that's where you find your pleasure, it's going to come in very short amounts and it's going to leave you without them, right? So the pain and pleasure happen, but pain is the price of pleasure because pleasure always goes away and leaves you without it. Pleasure is the reward of pain, right? So pleasure is the expectation of the cessation of pain, right? So it's in a sense, it's such an odd way to think about it. The reward of pain, in this world of pain, it's the pleasures that make it endurable, right? It's the pleasure, the idea of pleasures that keep us going. The promise of pleasure keeps us going, even though it has never worked for us and has never sustained us. What else can we hope for in this world of constant change, except to gather as much pleasure as possible? But we don't understand that when we gather pleasure, we gather equal amounts of pain. So our toil is in vain. There is no way around. Right. I remember seeing such an iconic moment on a walk in San Francisco. I was down in the end of Polk Street. It was where the Tenderloin, I guess the poorer parts, the challenging parts of San Francisco. And I came around a corner in an alley, kind of a trash-strewn alley, and there was this blonde man there, probably in his 20s, in ecstasy. No shirt on, torn jeans, his hands upraised like this. His face was just this contortion of both pain and ecstasy at the same time. And hanging out of his arm was the hypodermic needle, still in his arm as he was holding up like this. And I walked there and I saw that, and I saw it with my seeing eye. And it was simultaneously the most beautiful thing I had ever seen and the most tragic thing I had ever seen simultaneously, because there was that bliss in his eyes, the potential, what we're reaching for, but that which is ours already by nature. He had purchased it with his use of drugs for a moment. He had purchased the presence of God through the use of his drugs, and was having that moment. But I could see the expense of buying that moment through drugs had cost this young man everything. I knew that when he came down from that, he had nothing but the gutter for his pillow, nothing but that alley for his home. And I saw the truth, just all bundled up in a single presentation as I came around that corner, that if you cannot find your bliss within yourself, you will end up paying everything to get it from outside of yourself. Right? And that's why we study these things. That's why we learn these things, because we're in a relative world. And that's a rather bold image, the guy with the hypodermic needle. But this could be the same thing of, a rich person in their giant house, frenetically trying to keep it clean and pay all the bills and keep the family happy and do the chores and do the maintenance and get that new roof and get that paint job. Right? Same frenetic energy of constant collecting for very little pleasure. Right? Our big showpiece of a home is only really enjoyed when we've got everybody over there to show it to. Right? In between that, it's just a burden. In between that, it's just keeping it clean, keeping it maintained, and keeping it going. That's why I asked Swami Prabhupada that one time. I told him, Maharaj, when do I get to teach? When do I get to say something? I'd been in the monastery for a long time. I was 45 years old and I wasn't doing anything of import. I was just washing dishes and off the toilets. And Swami, I told him, told him at lunch, I said, I feel like just a glorified maintenance engineer. He said, when is my monasticism going to be something worthwhile? And he said, oh, well, it is true. You are a glorified maintenance engineer. He says, but where in the world will you go to be something different? Do you not realize every single person in this world is only a maintenance engineer, trying to maintain their pleasures, their houses, their families, their securities, their retirements, their vacations. All of them are just living to maintain the things that they have to pay for the pleasures they believe they have to have in this world. And I was floored by that. I was like, oh my God, is that not a dose of truth right there that I had never seen so clearly? Yes, so it is a burden. The body needs a burden. Pleasure and pains happen. Pain is the price of pleasure. It is what you will pay for having pleasure. It's like the waves, right? Like Vivekananda says, behind the wave, there's always the lull. You get equal amounts of wave and lull in the ocean. You can't have a wave without the lull. Pain is the price of pleasure, and pleasure is the reward of pain. In life, too, you often please by hurting and hurt by pleasing. To know that pain and pleasure are one is peace, right? And how could we develop that knowledge to know that pain and pleasure are one? There's several techniques that we've touched on, but they all take strong practice. None of this is going to come to you. Well, I can't say that. God can do anything she wants, but in one sense, this isn't stuff that this is going to be like taking a walk and expecting to find a few $100 bills to pay rent on the walk, right? Probably not going to happen. Sure, mother can do it if she wants to, but probably not going to happen. And so these insights that we're looking for our discernment, they come from diving deep in our practice, going into that silent space. But one of the ways of seeing that pleasure and pain are one is to realize that everything is merely a thought, right? Have you reminded yourself of that lately? It's one of my favorite things to talk about, that evidence that we don't live in a world, right? Because none of the sense information gets an unbroken stream to our mind. All of it gets interpreted somewhere. And so we live in a world of symbols created by the mind, and that's all we experience. We've never seen the outside world. If you think for a moment about it, it's proven. It's not a philosophical flight, right? The light going into your eyes does not reach your brain. The sound going in your ears does not reach your brain. The things you touch do not reach your brain. They all get absorbed by the senses and then interpreted, translated into biochemical information. That biochemical information goes to the proper instrument or resource in the brain to get interpreted back into an image or back into a smell or back into an idea. Gets interpreted and gets presented to you. And that presentation to you is the world that you're experiencing right now. You're not experiencing the world. You're experiencing the senses presentation of the world to your mind. That's what you're experiencing. So understand that means everything is an idea, right? The light you're looking at is not the light. You've never seen the light. That's outside your body, you assume. You've never seen that light. So what are you seeing? You're seeing the mind's presentation to you of light. It's just a thought of light. You are not experiencing light directly. You will only have one direct experience in this world, and it will be the one that you will never forget. It will be your enlightenment, because that is the only thing that is real. That enlightenment. Everything else is story. Everything else is relative, requires something else to be true before it can be true. Right? So you live in a world of ideas. You have never seen anything but a thought. You've never experienced anything but a thought. The stories of your ego have become your history and your future, but you know very well that you don't remember them perfectly, nor do you project them perfectly into the future. So they also are a guessing game. So when you sit and you think, when you sit and discern, from the perspective of the unchanging self within, these things become clear to you, right? So this is one way that we come to know that pleasure and pain are one. Turning everything into an act of worship, accepting the moment as perfect and taking that moment and offering it to the beloved. That's another way of seeing everything as pain and pleasure being the same. Right? If you understand that pain and pleasure are both just conditions of sense, then you can come to that same conclusion, that they don't mean anything different until the mind tells you they're different. Oh, that one means you're bleeding. Oh, that one means you laugh too hard, right? Different feelings, but just feelings. All right. To know that pain and pleasure are one is peace. Questioner, well, all this is very interesting, no doubt, but my goal is more simple. I want more pleasure and less pain in life. What am I to do? Lydia, with your giggles of wisdom. Yes. I want more pleasure and less pain. That's the lie. Thakur, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, all of them tell you, you can't have one without the other. You don't know what one is without the other, right? If you could have only pleasure, it would cease to be pleasurable, because you only know it was pleasure because you were comparing it to pain. So you see, you can't have one without the other. If you do find a situation where you only have one and not the other, that one is going to become very boring very quickly. It's not going to be satisfying. That is the cruel trick of Maya, right? Everything looks delicious, but you can't just sit there and eat pie your whole life. You wouldn't want to. In a short while, you'd get sick, and pie would no longer be pleasurable, it would be painful. So you see, pain and pleasure are the same. That which is pleasurable in excess becomes pain, right? That drink was pleasurable until it became alcoholism. And then it took your wife, it took your family, it took your job, it took your health, it took your house. And there you are with your alcohol, more miserable than you've ever been in your life. Your pain, your pleasure has become your pain. So we're trying to see these things so that we don't get caught in these things, so that we can live in that space where we are aware of this bliss that does not have a cause, does not go away. It's a constant and it's a steady, and it's your nature. Right? So Maharaj says, if you're looking for more pleasure and less pain in this world, you ask me what you are to do. Well, I'll tell you, as long as there is consciousness, there must be pleasure and pain. It is in the nature of the I am of consciousness to identify itself with the opposites, right? Because that's how it knows that's how it comes up with a sense of being. You only know you exist because of this constant comparison going on in your mind between you and everything else. Your entire universe is composed of that and how it relates to this. that, how it relates to this, that, how it relates to this, that, how it relates to this, right? So we are the very definition of self-centered, because we take this body mind as our center and we use it to determine the truth of the rest of the universe. So everything else in the universe has a line of relativity going directly to this body mind. Well, that can't possibly be true. And so how distorted is this view of the universe, right? It is in the nature of the I am of consciousness to identify itself with the opposites. That's how we come up with this false sense of being. Well, I'm not a woman, so must be a man. Well, I'm not dead, I must be alive, right? Right. And so the questioner says, well, then of what use is all this to me? It does not satisfy. Maharaj, who are you who is unsatisfied? Right. So he's saying, get your eyes off of these things. You're focusing on the things. Who is it that's focusing on things? This is where you need to go to find your peace. It's not figuring out what's on that end of the stick that's important. It's figuring out what's on this end of the stick. Who's holding this stick that you're using to measure everything in the universe? Pay attention to that. So who are you and who is unsatisfied? I am the pain pleasure man. I love that. I just saw the Pillsbury Doughboy on the counter. The pain pleasure man. Pain and pleasure are both ananda. They're both bliss. Here I am sitting in front of you and telling you from my own immediate and unchanging experience, pain and pleasure are the crests and valleys of the waves of the ocean of bliss. Deep down there is utter fullness. Dive deep, get under the emotions, get under the ups and downs of mind, get under the conditions of your body, get underneath the sensations of your senses. Go all the way down to that and lay at the bottom of the pool, looking up at all the noise, looking up at the waves, looking up at the people's legs kicking and struggling to stay above water. Right? Go down. I told you that when I was a kid. That was I used to love that, which probably was a sign I wasn't normal. But I used to love to go into the deep end of the pool and push myself all the way down underneath the ladder that people would climb up to get out so I could hold myself down there. And I would just get as still and as quiet as I could. And I was just so fascinated because I knew when you break the edge of the water at the top that the kids are screaming and the whistles are blowing and people are running around and there's just craziness up there, splashing, jumping, turmoil. But at the bottom of the deep end, it was always perfectly silent. And you could look up and you could see all of this nonsense going on up there. But you were in a world completely different from theirs. And see, this is reality. You have the deep end of the pool within you, right? The waves, the noise happening up on the surface of the swimming pool, those are your thoughts, right? And if you stay at the thought level, you've got thoughts moving everywhere, constantly, all kinds of noise, and the senses are adding to them. You know, anytime a sense gets fired, it pulls up memories and more thoughts, and consequently more values to balance and to pay it to equal out and to figure out, right? But you don't have to be there. Sit at the bottom of the pool. Sit deeper, go deeper. That's what Thakur is talking about. Go before your mind. Don't go into your mind. Go before your mind. Go before your mind and find out what's in there. What is going on when nothing is going on? What do I think I am? Or what? Don't answer that. That's the wrong way to put it. What am I when nothing is telling me? When the mind has ceased, then you know who you are. And that's the only way. Why? Because you cannot fit into a word. You do not fit into the triads of the mind. You're bigger. So you can't think about what you are. You will never know from a secular perspective who you are. You will never know. because it cannot be known in time-space causation, the triad of the mind. It cannot be placed there. You are the singularity of time-space causation. Time-space causation as before the Big Bang. That is what you are in the self. That is what you are in your nature. Right? So pain and pleasure are both ananda, bliss. Here I am sitting in front of you and telling you from my own immediate and unchanging experience, pain and pleasure are the crests and valleys of the waves in the ocean of bliss. Deep down, there is utter fullness. Is your experience constant? It is timeless and changeless. All right, now, because you see, he had to take it out of the paradigm there, because the questioner, is your experience constant? He thinks in terms, he's still in the mind, so he's thinking in terms of longevity, of time, of space and causation. So for experience to be constant, it needs a constant causation, a constant effort of maintenance. And he's saying, is it constant, right? And it has to break the boundaries of time. Is it forever? So is your experience constant? He's asking as an ego self. He's trying to see something that is the absence of ego, and he can't. He's showing us our problem. We're looking from inside of our thought bubble at our thought bubble, trying to find truth in there. The truth is where the bubble is floating in. It's not in the bubble itself, right? We have to back out. Neti, neti, neti. I'm not this. I'm not this. I'm not this noise. I'm not that thought. I can't hear from my mind what I need to do. God is not going to talk to me through my mind. God does not use my mind to talk to me. God is before mind. God is talking to me by this constant intuitive knowing of an eternal relationship that exists within me, that just nags me with enough information, but never enough to blot out my senses. Just enough to keep the scent in the air. So I know that my beloved has walked through this room. I can tell, but I don't know if they're still in this room or what. I could just smell what's left of the aroma of their perfume as they had just walked through the room. And that perfume is the perfume of the musk deer that Ramakrishna talks about. That scent in the room that tells you your beloved has just been there is emanating from your own self, because that is the presence of the beloved that you're smelling in the room, because you're living in the thought of the room and not in the room itself. If you could be in the room itself, you would know that the aroma is from the company of your beloved who is with you right now in fullness, right? So is your experience constant? It's timeless and it's changeless. So it's not an experience because it's changeless, right? So it's not inside of your time. Is it constant? It's not relative, right? Because it's timeless and changeless. It's not relative. So it's not being measured by anything. There is nothing to measure it with. So it's timeless and it's changeless. The questioner, well, all I know is desire for pleasure and fear of pain. Maharaj, that is what you think about yourself. Stop it, right? It's only a thought. Your idea of you is only an idea of you. It is never you. What you think you are is only an idea. What you are is what you know in silence. So that is what you think about yourself. Stop it. If you cannot break a habit all at once, consider the familiar way of thinking and see its falseness. Observe. That's all that's necessary. Observe carefully what's going on in you at every moment, not to you, not from the outside world. That's not so important. What is your mind doing at this moment with what it's hearing, with what it's seeing, with what it's imagining? And are you more interested in that than you are in the fact that it's you who's watching it? right? And that's the switch that has to happen. As long as we're more interested in the change, we can never live as anything but the thought of ourself, right? It's not until you can stop being interested in the fluttering constant change and become interested in that which is not changing, that is observing this change. When you place your identity at that end of the stick, you identify with silence. Who am I? I am silence. You identify with peace. What am I? I am a peace that transcends understanding. I'm the peace that's native to being, not thinking, right? I'm immortal. I'm outside of time. I'm not going to be here a long time. My life is not long. My life is an instant, a never-ending instant. I'm outside of time. I am not on the timeline at all. So that is what you think about yourself. Stop it. If you can't break the habit all at once, consider the familiar way of thinking and see its falseness. So let the loop play, but watch it. Don't believe it. Don't follow it. Just observe it. And ask yourself, is it true? Is that thought true from every angle, or can I see an angle from which it is not true? And if I can prove that it's not true from even one angle, then it is not true. Then I can let go of it. So consider the familiar way that you think and just see it. See its falseness. Questioning the habitual is the duty of the mind. Questioning, that's a great point for your practice. This is a great point for your practice. Questioning the habitual is the duty of the mind. What things have you believed for so long that you have forgotten to even ask yourself if they're true? What habits of thinking are you still following that have proven true or proven false already, right? What's your plan for your next vacation? And what do you hope to get from that vacation? And did you get it from the last vacation? Vacations are one of the most frustrating things in the world because they demonstrate this truth completely and perfectly. Because you spend your whole year planning that 2-week vacation. You go on that vacation, and what is the experience of vacation? The experience of vacation is watching it dwindle away. Oh God, I've only got 7 days left. Oh God, we're down to 5 days. Oh my Lord, I'm out of here in 2 days. Oh no. And then the planning for next year's vacation starts. Right? And who has ever finished a vacation and been like, oh, thank God that's over. I'm so ready to get back to the office, get back to cleaning my house and the kitchen and cooking for the kids. This is fantastic. So what did it give you? It gave you nothing. It gave you a distraction that barely lasted the 2 weeks that it was gone. And now it's dumped you right back where you were in the exact same condition you were before you left, and maybe a little bit worse because now you're 2 weeks behind at work. Right? And what are you going to do? Like all the other rest of us fools, you're going to immediately start planning the next vacation. Because this is the habit. And the mind doesn't know what else to do. So it just takes up the familiar and starts going again. It's up to you to become the eyes of wisdom in there. To be like, hey, gosh, I need to stop thinking that this vacation is where my life happens. I need to stop thinking that this vacation is where my joy is and where my real life is. I need to find a way of making this moment a vacation. I need to find a way of being free in this moment so that I'm not just pretending to be free for 2 weeks every year, right? And so it's up to you to watch your mind, to find these secrets, because indeed it is possible to be on vacation all the time. It is possible to be free and to feel a sense of bliss and contentment even when the pot is stirring and bubbling like a witch's stew. It's still possible because that silent observer is always at the other end of the stick. Wherever there's craziness, pain, constant, obnoxious lack of peace, all you have to remember is right at the other end of that stick is me. I'm not changing. I'm free. I'm silent. I'm in bliss. I'm immortal, right? So you just have to keep remembering who's holding the stir stick. Stop paying attention to the stirring of coffee and pay attention to the gripping of the stir stick at the other end, that sense of you. So questioning the habitual is the duty of the mind. What the mind created, the mind must destroy, or realize that there is no desire outside the mind and stay out. Right? Just see the truth of it. These things don't satisfy. I should stop chasing them. I should accept them in the moment, but expect nothing from them. Right? And if I expect nothing, I won't be disappointed. And you'll say, oh, but you won't get anything. Well, maybe you'll get what you already are. And maybe that was the only thing ever to hope to get in this world. Since you come in naked and you go out in ashes, what will you take with you? So perhaps that's the deepest lesson. You didn't come here to get anything. You came here to find out what you brought with you. So questioning the habitual is the duty of the mind. What the mind created, the mind must destroy. Right? And that's talking about your karma right there. The mind creates your karma by creating the sense of doership, the entanglement with the objective world. Right? And the mind has created the story of egoism that binds you to that sense of responsibility, that sense of doership. Has forced you to constantly use that doership to search for an elusive happiness. And it's used that doership to accuse you of all the wrongdoing and all the stupid things you've done. And it's used your mind to store them away, to hold you accountable, that you will never forget who you are. You're this trapped, egotistical being who does selfish things all the time and who has a million debts to pay and a million pleasures to find. Right? What the mind created, it must destroy. That's what sadhana is. It's destroying this story, which is the egoism that has created you separate and apart from the whole and made you small and made you afraid and have given you the vulnerability of being naked in the Garden of Eden. So questioning the habitual, that's your duty. What the mind created, it must destroy. That's your task. Or realize that there is no desire outside the mind and just stay out. Don't go in there looking. Accept the moment in its moment. Let go of it as it happens. Offer it freely so that you hold on to nothing. And impose your nature, which is natural. Impose Satchitananda on the moment. Let it act as it would before your ego poisons it. Right? The questioner, honestly, I distrust this explaining everything as mind-made. The mind is only an instrument, as the eye is an instrument. Can you say that perception is creation? I see the world through the window, not in the window. All you say holds well together because of the common foundation. But I do not know whether your foundation is in reality or only in the mind. I can have only a mental picture of it. What it means to you, I do not know. Oh, this if he keeps going with that thinking, he's going to get there. Right? Because that's very true. But so he's getting to the understanding that he only knows the mind, that you can only ever know the mind. You can't know anything beyond the mind. The mind stands between you and everything. So the mind is everything. Maharaj, as long as you take your stand in the mind, you will see me in the mind. Right? As long as you hold on and are interested in the thought of yourself amongst a universe of other thoughts, then you're never going to hear me. Maharaj is telling him, you're not going to ever see me because you're only interested in the thoughts that you're seeing, the thoughts of your mind. And so you will never see me. You will always see the imposed veil of what you think I am. Right? That's what happens when you choose a perspective in the mind and live according to that perspective in mind, you're blind. You can only see what you have assigned yourself to see in everything around you, because that's how the world of thought works. That's how the thought of you in the world of thought works. So as long as you take your stand in the mind, as long as you think that it has something to do with thinking, something to do with knowing, something to do with relativity, right? Then that's all you're going to see. You have to find something outside of that, which only comes through an absolute silence. It's not something you have to create or achieve. It's something you have to soak into. You have to let go into, right? It's like a bathtub of warm water. You just have to get in and relax, right? It takes you that whole time in the bath to get relaxed, to let go. And that's what sadhana is. Sadhana is letting go in the hot bath of the presence of God. So as long as you take your stand in the mind, you will see me in the mind. How inadequate are words for understanding? The questioner says, yes, indeed. We've realized that quite some time ago. Words cannot tell us truth. They can only point at it. The scriptures are not there to tell us what God is. They are there to tell us what God is not, so that that which is obvious can become apparent, in the words of Swami Tattvamayana. How inadequate are words for understanding, Maharaj? Without words, what is there to understand? Words are what cause the confusion. You're trying to take a singularity and put it into subject, object, verb. You can't do it. So the sentence itself is causing you to think, causing you to not know, because you have to unknow something in order to give it those attributes, subject, object, verb. Without words, what is there to understand? The need for understanding arises from misunderstanding. What I say is true, but to you it is only a theory. How will you come to know that it is true? Listen, remember, ponder, visualize, experience. Also apply it in your daily life. Have patience with me, and above all, have patience with yourself, for you are your only obstacle. Ha ha ha. There's another beautiful piece of truth. You are the only one. There is no reason that you can't be realized this very moment. It's what you are. It's your nature. It's fully present in you. You are your own obstacle, because you will not accept your enlightenment without a story that causes enlightenment. And you're not going to get a story that causes enlightenment in this world, right? You are the obstacle. Let yourself go. That is all. Have patience with me, and above all, have patience with yourself, for you are your only obstacle. The way leads through yourself, beyond yourself. As long as you believe only the particular to be real, only the particular, this perspective of me and mine, this I that draws all of its lines from itself to everything else in the universe, you have to just step out of that. Just step out of it. The way leads through yourself. Dive deep. Go beyond mind inside. Sit silently in the heart. Watch, and watch some more. It will betray all of the truth to you. The truth is obvious to the watcher. The truth is constantly diminished by the storyteller, right? If your life has a story, your storyteller is lying to you. You have to break out of that story. As long as you believe only the particular to be real, what you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, and remember and think, conscious and happy and as long as you believe only the particular to be real, conscious and happy, and reject the non-dual reality as something imagined, an abstract concept, you will find me doing out concepts and abstractions. But once you have touched the real within your own being, you will find me describing what for you is the nearest and the dearest. So just a simple perspective change. Live on this end of the stick, right? Not the end that's in the mind stirring the waters with me in mind, but the fingers that are stirring, the holding the stick at the other end. Live there at that end of the stick, and the scriptures will begin to tell you about all that is near and dear to you. If you live at the noisy end of the stick, they're just going to be telling you about the noise at the end of the stick. So let go. All right. We'll stop there for this morning.